From the Sunshine State, this is Tampa Bay's 10 Talk.
It's time for FLALAW, brought to you by the personal injury attorneys of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes. This hour will be informative, along with taking your questions and comments. Now, here are your hosts for today's show.
That's right. Welcome back to FLALAW Live on the radio. I'm so glad you're joining us once again. Hopefully you are a faithful listener and you know that this is your live legal call-in talk show coming to you live every Tuesday at 5 o'clock on WTAN. Of course, if you are new to the show, then welcome. I hope you share this with your family members and friends. Let them know that FLALAW is live on the radio. We've got an awesome guest for you today, but normally speaking, this is obviously a legal call-in talk show. So we talk about all kinds of legal topics over various areas of law. A lot of times we do focus on personal injury. We talk about current events, changes in the law, updates that are affecting our community. And we bring on amazing legal experts in their field of law, and we bring them on to talk about various topics that are affecting our community or just in the legal sense in general across the state of Florida. And so we have an awesome veteran guest. He's come to the show many, many times. If you are a faithful listener, then you probably already know who he is. But of course, I am going to give him a moment in just a bit to reintroduce himself to our listeners. We're going to spend some time getting to know him, his legal journey, and what he's up to these days. And I can guarantee you he's got a lot going on, and he's going to tell you all about it. I'm quite excited and impressed with what he's doing, and I think you will be too. But with that being said, this is your opportunity to, of course, share this feed with anybody and everybody that you can think of, because we are streaming live on Facebook and also on YouTube. And you'll also have the opportunity to listen to this later on just about all podcast platforms. So I'm going to give you all those details before we jump into the show tonight. So that everybody that's listening and wants to listen, continue to listen. If you got to drop off, but you want to come back and listen to it later, you'll have all the details. We're also going to give you the call-in number. If you have a question for our special guest tonight, you can certainly do that. We'll make time for that as the show progresses. If you have a comment or would like to chime into the conversation, the call-in number for tonight's show is 727-441-3000. That's the number that you're going to dial if you want to call into the studio and join in on the discussion that we're having tonight. Also, we are on Facebook, as I mentioned before. So that is going to be Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes Injury Lawyers. If you click on that page, you should see a red circle around it that shows that we are live right now in the WTAN studios. You'll be able to see myself and special guests. You can comment right there at the bottom of the comment section if you would like to chime into the discussion. If you have a question about what we're talking about this evening, that's going to be the best place to get your questions in. I'm actually going to go ahead and share the live feed now on my Facebook page too, so that folks can see it there. Also, same thing as YouTube. So if you're not a Facebook user, but you obviously watch YouTube or have a YouTube account, then go over to YouTube because you can see us there as well. We're in the studio. We'll be here for the next hour discussing my special guest, his legal career and what he has going on these days and the journey that he's on right now, which I think is awesome. So with that being said, also the podcast. So after today's show, it will be available on podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, just about anywhere that you can consume a podcast. You'll be able to find this episode on FLALAW on the radio. So if you go on your podcast platform, search FLALAW on the radio, you'll find us, follow us, so you'll be able to get the full show from tonight as well, especially if you're not able to listen the whole thing live. That's okay. We've got you covered, and the show will be awesome, as I said. So with that being said, I would like to reintroduce to you a special guest that I said he's been on several times now. I've lost count. But he's kind of become one of our resident criminal defense lawyers who has educated us quite a bit on criminal defense law in the state of Florida, updated us when things have changed in the law, especially recently. We had talked about some DUI changes that are impacting, obviously, Florida residents. And so now he's back with a new journey that he's embarking on. And we had the pleasure of being the platform where that announcement was made. So if you were hanging out with us back in December, almost 6 months ago to be exact, then you know exactly who I have with me here in the studio. I have attorney, law firm owner, father, and now judicial candidate, Zachariah Wade. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So let's assume that some people are listening that may not know who you are. Maybe they have been asleep at the wheel. They've missed some of these great shows that you were on, and they now need to get up to speed. Tell us about you. Who is Zachariah Wade?
Well, like you said, my name is Zachariah. I am a father first before anything else. That's my favorite title.
Of course.
Like you said, I'm also a law firm owner, former prosecutor, former law school professor as well. But aside from my titles, I'm just an ordinary guy.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that, but I think a lot of people would probably beg to differ on the ordinary part. But let's jump into it because you touched on a lot of things. And as I mentioned in December, you shared with our listeners and those that are close to you in the legal community that you were embarking on a journey to run for judge, right? And so before we get into the, what that means and, why these positions are important or even what the role is that you're running for, I want to just kind of introduce people to you and kind of start up with who you are and letting people know a little bit about your story. Just from what you've described, you sound as though you're well-rounded and you've had a background that would sound very successful, being a former prosecutor, a law professor. Those are all wonderful things. So tell us a little bit more about your journey,
Sure.
Coming up to present day.
Education has always been a big part of my journey. So when I tell my story, I sort of speak from that perspective. My mother ran a daycare center when I was a child. She was a teacher. So that really kind of catapulted me into education. Jumping forward, right? Because I'm not going to go back to the very beginning.
Sure.
But jumping forward a little bit, when I was in high school, education was important to me because I grew up in a pretty rough environment. And so I used every opportunity I could not to be home, to be transparent. I was in the marching band. I was in the math club, the music club, the Spanish club. I joined the chorus.
All the things.
A TA, all of the things.
You can sing?
A little bit. I can carry my voice a little bit. I can hit some notes.
We got to remember that, Ed. The next time we'll have him sing when he comes back.
Oh, man. I shouldn't have said that, I guess. But music has always been a big part of who I am. And because of that, when I turned to college, I decided that I wanted to go to Florida A&M University. I wanted to be a part of the Marching 100. But because of the way I grew up, money for college wasn't just sitting around. I knew that I had to apply my love for education to get there. So I was able to obtain an academic scholarship to Florida A&M. I went 4 years there, loved it. I knew before I started there that I wanted to be an attorney. So it was easier to decide, my matriculation and how I wanted to proceed towards a degree. When I got my bachelor's degree, I, of course, knew that I wanted to go to law school. And by then I had been accepted at Stetson. So I transferred down here, moved to Gulfport, spent 3 years at Stetson, loved that. And as these experiences built, I decided how I wanted to use my law degree. And that ultimately led me to start my career at the prosecutor's office here in Pinellas County.
Right. And that was just kind of just the beginning of the journey. But going back, as you mentioned, you kept yourself kind of immersed in education and extracurriculars. Did you encounter any obstacles along the way that made it seem like maybe it would be difficult to either go to FAMU or become a lawyer?
Absolutely. And I say that not just because of where I was coming from on a financial level, right? I was raised by a single mother. So I watched her grind and get us through. But even aside from that, there were other environmental factors. I unfortunately did not grow up with the presence of my father being a constant factor. And just that alone sometimes can be a hindrance to some level of success. But I was able to overcome those things. Even aside from those two, though, there were direct influences that I would say tried to keep me back. I can remember specifically people who, when I told them what my goals were in terms of going to college, they would quite literally say, nah, that's not for you. You're not going to make it there. It can't happen for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, those were people that when I got my admission slips, letters, I would take it to them and say, I did it. So really on all levels, there have been things that could have slowed me down or stopped me. But at this point in my life, I have taken a humble look at myself, and I've recognized that throughout all of those experiences, I had people, one, who showed me, the way to go. I always had someone that was some sort of a role model. Even
Yeah, I
if
was
they
going to
were,
ask you that because,
yeah.
we do encounter, sometimes people that, well, maybe well-intentioned, but they become detractors or even discouraging at some point. For whatever reason, they think that you can't do it, and so they project that onto you, or maybe they couldn't do it, and they're expressing their own fears. But there's got to be someone that I would think in your mind who maybe was an influence and an encourager or a mentor. Is there somebody that stands out that you can think of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have an older cousin. He'd probably appreciate not being named. He's basically a recluse when it comes to things like that. So I won't name him.
Okay, fair enough.
But he is a person who stepped in, and he's one of the first men, not the only one, but he stepped in and really showed me what it was like when somebody gives you their word. They tell you they're going to do something and then they do it.
Yeah.
Just that alone right there made me look at this person differently. He really took me under his wing and opened up my world. I started doing things for the first time, like swimming in a lake, right? Simple things like that, driving a tractor, hunting.
That's cool.
It just opened up, like I said, opened up a different world for me. So absolutely, there were people who pushed me, and even people who pushed me on smaller levels, meaning they had less exposure time. For example, I used to work at Red Lobster, and I remember a guy came in, he was wearing a military uniform, and I sat him down, and he just started asking me questions. I realized through the conversation that he was a recruiter.
Oh, okay.
But he found out that I was, I was in the books.
Yeah.
I was headed in the right direction, so I wasn't interested in joining
Not doing
the
that,
military.
buddy.
Not at that point, right? But when he found out what I was interested in, I told him about Florida A&M's band camp, and then I let him know I'm trying to, I'm working here to save money so I can get there. He paid for it. He reached back out and just
a random customer at Red Lobster.
Absolutely. And I found him recently. He's still an Army recruiter. So,
wow. Funny how things can be divinely aligned. Yeah.
And it mattered every step of the way. I can always think of people who pushed me and just helped. They paid it forward.
Wow.
Made a difference.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, I can always think about, going back to, school, and just I can probably name like that one guidance counselor or that one person in career development that maybe gave you the nudge or helped you out. Shout out to the cousin that will remain nameless.
You know who you
are. Is there anybody else on your journey that you would say that, this is kind of my biggest influence, even in the legal field or after becoming, an attorney?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really it's a mosaic of people.
Sure.
Because I grew up in a unique way.
Mm-hmm.
I am a composite of my experiences. I'm a product of the people who have poured into me. So I could literally sit here and fill this hour just naming people who did like that individual in the military who just did one little thing. I mean, law school professors, people who are now law school deans.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, kind of jumping forward a little bit, but a lot of these people have in the legal community are my endorsers when it comes to the campaign because they believe in me on that level. So.
Good. So we're obviously going to jump into that in a little bit as far as, how that shaped the decision that you've made and the journey that you're on right now. But I don't want to get there just yet. I want to stay a little bit where we are and learning a little bit more about Zachariah Wade and what kind of brought you to this. So when you were at Florida A&M, did you already know that you wanted to go to law school, or did that come to, fruition at some point as you were? Okay.
I did. I knew I wanted to be an attorney when I was in high school. And I actually, stepping into this process, I found my old letter, that I mailed to my brother. And I found it. I remembered it was, I think it was my junior year.
You might have touched on this before on one of our past shows. So
I shared it on social media too. So
remind us what this letter was. Did you wrote a letter to your brother explaining that, this is what you wanted to do? Right?
Yeah, my brother was actually incarcerated at the time, and that had a huge impact on me because I saw him go through some things, and it helped me to steer clear of them. So shout out to my big brother because he was in custody, and I wrote him a letter, and I sent him a copy of my acceptance letter to Florida A&M, and he sent me a picture of it as a reminder as this process has gone on. And I told him,
How cool is
I got
that?
accepted and I'm going to be a lawyer. I said it, I wrote it down, and that's part of the way I was raised is
Yeah.
write the vision, make it plain.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny that you mentioned that because I had worked as a law clerk when I was an undergrad for a personal injury attorney, and, as fate would have it. And I never really thought about personal injury. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but never thought about doing PI work. And there were so many ways that it made me kind of get back to ending up to work for this lawyer, this particular lawyer. And he had basically wrote me a note as I was getting ready to leave for law school and just saying how, just in a few short years, we'll be colleagues and you'll be doing the same thing I'm doing or probably better than what I'm doing. And so I just kind of kept that note and he doesn't probably know that, but I just would go back to it every now and then throughout law school while studying for the bar when things got rough. And I'm like, I know I'm going to be in that place in just a few short years. I just got to get there. And so like you said, sometimes you just need that reminder, and then not to focus on me much, but then I did it again during the bar. I had a screensaver on my cell phone so that every time I opened my phone, it said, I passed the bar exam. This was throughout the whole bar study, bar prep. So every time I looked at the phone, it said, I passed. So I literally saw I passed throughout the whole process. Then when I did pass, I made that my profile picture on Facebook.
There you go. There's levels to
So
this.
you got to speak it into existence. And that's how those things come to pass. So with that being said, you said you went to Stetson.
Yep.
I'm sure it's two different worlds, two different cultures, from Florida A&M to Stetson. But what brought you to Stetson, and how do you feel like that shaped your journey and made you who you are as an attorney?
Yeah. So I wasn't dead set on Stetson originally. There was an event at Florida A&M called Law Day,
Mhm.
where there was just a number of law schools that flooded the gym. They were tabling, and I was able to meet
That's
the
cool.
admissions counselor from Stetson. She gave me some information, let me know, the numbers they're looking for in terms of GPA and LSAT score and those types of things. And I realized that this is a possibility for me. I'm originally from Central Florida as well, so this is home. It didn't feel foreign.
Yeah.
And then I was fortunate enough to also be awarded an academic scholarship down to Stetson. So
Nice.
I came down to Gulfport and started learning about the law. And like you said, it was a completely different world going
Yeah.
from the mindset and the location.
Yeah.
Right, from Florida A&M up in Tallahassee, down to Gulfport, Florida, and now I'm studying the law. Things are way more serious. It was just a different dynamic, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It made it different, right? Removal from Tallahassee. Now we're here to start something new.
Right. And so when you got to Stetson, did you immediately know prosecutor or criminal defense or, what you wanted to practice? Was there anything that you just knew I was going to do?
Absolutely. I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor.
Cool.
And that was a combination of two things. One, it was the environment that I grew up in.
Mhm.
I grew up around some pretty terrible people. And I remember thinking to myself, I wish there was somebody I could call, somebody that I could just tell them what you're doing and they could put you away.
Mhm.
And then I learned more about how our system works. And I decided to become that person. And I wanted to help people in that regard. So when I got to Stetson, that was also a time when a lot of tumultuous things were happening in the country. It seemed like there was a divide being created. It was centered around shootings,
Mhm.
unarmed people. Most of them were African American,
Mhm.
and that really caused a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
And that's the world we were living in at that time. At least that's what was, being pushed
Mhm.
to us by the
Mhm.
news, and that impacted me because I saw a lot of anger, I saw a
Mhm.
lot of frustration, but I feel like it was misguided.
Yeah.
And I saw some people take on the mindset of a destructive mindset. We don't want this system. We don't like this system. We don't believe it. It's against us. I never adopted that mindset. Instead, I wanted to be a part of it and just make sure that it was running the right way.
Yeah.
And so I knew to do that, I had to be a prosecutor. I say
Okay.
that because if you think about the game of baseball, the prosecutor is the pitcher
Okay.
and the defense attorney
I
sometimes
like that
is the batter.
analogy. Yeah.
Because sometimes as a defense attorney, you're not going to score and you just need to get on base, which might mean less prison or maybe jail instead of prison. And that's not really where I wanted to start my legal career from. I wanted to start with a little more decision-making power. Obviously, there was a lot of guidance being a young prosecutor, but I wanted to sit in the middle and be able to do the right thing on the side of law enforcement.
Yeah. So you weren't like like me, a lot of law students that came in with one thing and tried a lot of different things and said, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. You kind of were steadfast on what you wanted to do.
I knew it. And it was confirmed once I did my internship at the state attorney's
I was going to
office.
ask if you had
That's
done
what
that.
did it for
Okay.
me. Yeah, because
All right.
I was a trial nut at law school. I wanted to be in the courtroom, and that's what I've done with my career as well. And I realized that being a prosecutor is the best way to make sure you're actually in the courtroom when you practice law.
And so that was solidified for you.
Absolutely. One of my mentors, I will say her name because she'll love it. Julia Metz. She was a prosecutor at the time.
She might be watching. Let me.
She might be. I'll
We're
tag her
Facebook
later
friends,
if
yeah.
not. But she had a huge impact on me, and she showed me what it was to be a good prosecutor. I
Mhm.
remember after my last competition with her, she was my trial team coach. She had a hat.
I was going to ask you about trial team. So good.
Oh, I
yeah.
loved it. She had a hat that had an American flag on the front, and on the back it said, "We do bad things to bad people."
Mhm.
And I just loved that hat because, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor.
That's what you wanted to do,
She was
yeah.
my mentor.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
after our last competition, she gave it to me. So, I
Really?
mean, little things like
How
that just
cool.
pushed me
How
along and let me
cool.
know that I was on the right path.
That's a great story. You still have that hat?
Absolutely. It's dirty now. I need to clean it because I wore it a lot, but I do still have it. It's a token for sure.
Nice. So tell me about trial team. Obviously Stetson, #1 in the nation for trial advocacy. So if you were a trial nut coming to law school, then you came to the right school, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me about that experience and how did that mold you and shape you? Obviously, Julia was your coach, but trial ed professor, anything else that you can think of that might have said, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be and on this journey.
Well, Stetson does have that rank of #1 trial advocacy in the nation, and they had it when I got there.
Mhm.
And they maintain it by making sure that you can't join the trial team as a 1L, right? So that first year in law school, I joined what was called the shadow team, where you really
Yeah.
do just shadow the traveling trial team, give them people to practice against. And that really helped me to confirm not only that I wanted to be on the trial team, but that I wanted to be in the courtroom when I
Yeah.
started practicing law.
Right. Awesome. So through that process, did you say, maybe I want to do civil litigation or, anything like that? Or did it continue to just reinforce, the prosecutorial side for you?
It absolutely leaned towards civil litigation because when we started traveling to competitions as part of the trial team,
Mhm.
the case packet, you don't have any control over that. And
What
as
you
much as
get,
I knew I
yeah.
wanted to be a prosecutor, my coaches tested me and pushed me and put me in situations where they intentionally did not let me take the prosecution case. I had to do the civil case, and it was civil
Good.
defense. And I was
Good.
like, what is this? But that taught me a lot, and it exposed me to a lot of different areas of our practice.
Right.
Civil law is totally different, even in a trial setting.
Right. Well, let's talk about your experience, because obviously you had your mindset on it, you did it, and you're doing it. And so let's start with, your beginning as a prosecutor. You've already kind of told us what attracted you to that. Do you feel like you learned more about our justice system and, fairness and the way things actually play out? Because you mentioned the climate in which you came into law school was a little bit tumultuous, just in the news and current events. And people kind of have their feelings about the justice system. Does it really work? And, do the juries get it right? And are things broken? So going into that and actually getting into that role, did you feel like you learned more about justice and fairness and those sort of things?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I started working at the state attorney's office here in Pinellas County when the late Honorable Bernie McCabe was
Yeah.
still in charge.
Mhm.
And he had a system, and it was something that I could jump right into because there was a lot of structure to it. There was a lot of training. There was a lot of information. And that's because there was a very high expectation.
Mhm.
What really opened my eyes to the justice system and a prosecutor's responsibility to it came when I started realizing how many cases prosecutors drop that no one ever knows about, because you review cases from a different perspective when between a law enforcement officer on the street who's making
Yeah.
an arrest
Yeah.
where you need probable cause for that arrest versus a prosecutor who has to examine the case and determine whether it can be proven in court beyond and to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt, right? That's just two different perspectives. And so that means that sometimes legal factors come into play and maybe we have to drop this case. And that really exposed me to how life-changing these decisions are.
Yeah.
Because everyone, if you find out there's a case, you're holding your breath. If there's been an arrest, are they going to charge me? Are they not?
Yeah.
And that really helped me understand the job. Then it only got more intense when I joined divisions like the domestic violence unit or when I jumped on the traffic homicide unit, and it just gets more real.
So what do you think might surprise people the most about the life of a prosecutor?
It's actually a pretty modest existence. You know, prosecutors work hard, as do defense attorneys and public defenders. For me, there was a lot of humility that came with it, and I saw that among my colleagues as well. And I say that for me because walking into the employee entrance at the state attorney's office, you're walking by the basketball courts at the jail. And every morning going in, I can hear them playing basketball, and that just stuck with me. One, because I like to play basketball every now and then, but the context in which they're doing it is obvious.
Yeah.
And then when I leave at the end of the day as well, it's not necessarily the same people, but you can still hear basketball being played, and that always stuck with me because I'm going home, and it felt like the people on that side of the wall, even though they were accused of committing crimes, and maybe some of them are guilty, there are people in there who need the right thing done in their case. No matter guilt, innocence, evidence or not, everyone is counting on the system to operate fairly.
Boom. Good transition. Let's make that segue.
All right.
Because at some point, you did leave the prosecutor's office and you transitioned into private defense work. Tell us, like, how did that transition go? So how many years were you in before you decided to make that switch? And then what made you do that?
5 years.
Okay.
5 years. And one of the things that made me comfortable with that transition was knowing that I handled almost every level of crime that there is, from disorderly conduct all the way up to murder, armed drug trafficking, home invasion, robbery, DUI, manslaughter, vehicular harm. I just, in my mind, run the gamut of all the cases that I wanted to jump into, and I could have honestly done that job forever. It was the coolest job I'll ever have. But I had a son.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be just more of a provider on a financial level than what I grew up with. That allowed me to shift gears. I felt like 5 years was a good mark. The expectation is 3, right? That's what the norm is.
Sure.
To be a prosecutor for 3 years. I stayed for 5 and left out of duty, I guess, for my boy.
Do you feel that former prosecutors make good defense lawyers?
I think former prosecutors make the best defense lawyers. And I say that because you understand the job. It really is that simple, but also that complex, because there are a lot of factors that you have to consider as a prosecutor that people might not think. For example, prosecutors they don't represent victims, but they're in very close communication with them. And victims call constantly, and they want updates, and they want to come to court, and they want your time. And people don't think about that as a prosecutor because we think of defense attorneys as the ones with a client.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
It just helped me understand the courtroom from a more well-rounded perspective.
Awesome. So obviously, being that you have seen both sides of the courtroom, like you mentioned, do you feel like that's made you a better lawyer?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And on a big level and a small level, because on a small level, just to lighten up a little bit, when I would have criminal cases, some of the first criminal trials as a defense attorney, I believe in the case, but I've been a prosecutor for 5 years, so I have to get these words right and make sure that I do not say, and my client is guilty, right, at the end of a closing.
Yeah.
So little things like that, I had to make sure I'm sharp.
What?
Yeah, like, do you know who you represent? But those are just the little things that all lawyers
The
go
turn
through.
of
You
the
have to
tongue.
make sure
You had
you
to get
your
that.
words
Yeah.
under you. And in larger ways too, because my only time going into the jail as a prosecutor was if I, went into a certain unit, I had to speak to a witness. It was rare, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
As a defense attorney, I go to jail a lot.
All the time,
I'm in there, and it's on a completely different level when
Mhm.
you're sitting across the table from someone and they just want to know, their time is not theirs right now. The only thing they have to look forward to are court dates, phone calls, and conversations with their lawyer.
Yeah.
So it's a different flavor, especially when you have to have tough conversations. But being able to lean on that experience as a prosecutor and help my clients understand why, right? And the why always points back to the law. This is why it's happening. These are your options. This is what we can make happen.
Yeah.
That level of experience, I find, gives my clients a lot of comfort, because I can answer their questions. Say, well, why would the state do that?
Yeah.
I can
Well,
tell
this
you.
is why.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Anytime you can give that other perspective, because that's what we're trying to do as lawyers, to be able to see both sides and to have both perspectives. So when you've actually stood in it and have done it, That's pretty much invaluable. But you've done something that a lot of lawyers haven't done, and you've also been a law school professor. So let's talk about that. At some point during your journey, you decided to teach law students. So is that harder than practicing law?
I think on some levels it is, because I was taught something at Florida A&M that translated to Stetson, which is you don't know anything until you can teach it to someone else.
That's very true.
And that means that, as a law school professor, I taught trial ad, which added a lot, because for a lot of people, their number one fear is public speaking, even if it's just a group of 10 students.
Yeah.
So not only are we teaching skills, but we're overcoming fear, and we're incorporating the practice of law as well. And so I think that made it a little more difficult, but as time went on, it made it easier, because it grew my confidence in myself. Like, I really do know what I'm talking about, to the point that now some of my former students practice in the same courthouse, and
Awesome.
in a joking way, they'll call me professor or coach or something like
Yeah.
that. Never in a professional setting, but it's nice because I know that I made that impact the way other professors made the impact on me.
Absolutely. And so, with you being a professor who's obviously actively practicing as an adjunct, what is something that you feel that young lawyers or even law students should know that they don't really teach in law school before they kind of get out into the world and they're in the courtroom?
Interpersonal communication, the ability to look at someone like we're doing now and just talk to them, because our trial system really is built on that.
Yeah.
On convincing a jury of that person's peers.
You have to connect. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to connect. And a lot of times we think connecting means a like or a share or a comment on Facebook. For example,
Sadly, these days, yeah.
yeah, if you see somebody that you haven't seen in person in a while, but you see them on Facebook and you feel like, hey, I know what's going on with your life, but you don't really. You just know what they posted. So that, I think that's something that holds a lot of lawyers back. Not necessarily trial lawyers though, right? Because that's what we do. We connect. We know how to stand up and communicate.
Absolutely.
Not to say that litigators don't, but there's just a different skill set.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, look, we touched on it in the very beginning, and we're going to get to your active campaign right now. But you're wearing several hats, obviously. Like I mentioned before, law firm owner, father, community volunteer, and judicial candidate. Let's talk about being a dad. Father's Day is
Right around the corner.
on the horizon. And you mentioned that obviously that's the most important thing in your life right now. So how do you balance fatherhood, and how has that really changed you as an attorney in any way that you practice?
Scheduling.
Yeah.
My Outlook calendar looks like a box of crayons, just like everyone else's. But there are truly time slots where, I pick him up from daycare between then and the time that he's asleep, and it just says dad mode. And
Smart.
At first that was difficult because the phone typically doesn't stop ringing. There's always something that can be done. But when I started realizing how fast this little joker is growing up, it became easy just to turn that off, get on the floor, play with some Legos and engage him. Because I saw something on social media that said kids spell love Time.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true sentiment. Has being a father changed the way you view people in the courtroom, whether they be your clients or victims or the jury? Has that impacted you at all as a father?
Absolutely. I think being a father has definitely, I guess, slowed me down is the word, made me more patient. I've always been a compassionate and empathetic person. I've always had understanding, but definitely more patience, more depth, I guess, to me now, because your kids teach you so much about yourself, especially when they start acting like you do, and they do the things that you don't like, and they're like, "Where did you learn that from?" So it made me more pensive, more thoughtful, more careful, and I realized that has approached really just the way I operate in general. Just slow down, be in dad mode. Dads are supposed to be, lighthouses, staunch and firm, but also a beacon of safety and provision.
Yeah. So you, in addition to all these things, you actually have your own firm too, right?
Correct.
So you are raising your son and also running a law firm. What has been most eye-opening about that process of having your own business?
Well, this fortunately is not the first business that I've operated. So I
Yeah.
did have a catering business for a while. I'm
Mhm.
known as the lawyer who barbecues. I have my
Mhm.
habeas corpus
Habeas
thing going on.
corpus,
So that
yeah.
kind of helped me get some exposure in terms of the the logistics and the procedures and
Mhm.
having organization. Um, but it doesn't make it any less daunting,
Yeah.
especially because it's a small firm, and I guess it really just taught me more discipline. Stepping into the campaign, becoming a father, running my own firm, you just realize the value of time
Yeah.
and how important it is to have a plan, a system, things in place that you can lean on and not try to scramble in every moment to reinvent the wheel.
Right. Absolutely. Now, how do you balance that now with campaigning?
So I have three main buckets to my life. It's, my role as a father that will always come first, the law firm and the campaign. And those two are not necessarily in order, they're just on the list. But I recognize that running this campaign, more than anything else, it requires time.
Mhm.
And we all have the same 24 hours in a day. So it really does come down to looking at my calendar, scheduling, getting out in front of things, and just staying on top of it as much as I can and truncating.
Yeah.
When it's time to be a dad, I'm dad.
Yeah.
When it's time to do lawyer work, I shut everything else down. You can't reach me because I'm working.
Yeah.
And when I'm
That's a skill
campaigning,
set.
same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, it's taught me a lot of discipline and it's sharpened my character.
Well, so for those listeners that were not listening very well in December, or maybe you just found out about us after that, tell people, what are you actually campaigning for?
I am campaigning for county court judge here in Pinellas County.
Okay. And what exactly does a county court judge do?
So county court judges handle low-level criminal offenses, typically misdemeanors. They handle here in Pinellas, they'll handle first appearance hearings, injunction cases, and across the board, civil cases that are low level, meaning less than $50,000. But here in Pinellas County, that typically civil cases on that level go to magistrates. So that's
Okay.
not necessarily something that county court judges are heavily involved in here. It's really limited to misdemeanor criminal offenses, injunctions, and advisories.
Okay. So it seems to be like the kind of judge that most people would typically encounter.
Yeah, they say that county court is the court that's closest to the people
Yeah.
because it's misdemeanors. It's full of, on the criminal level, it's full of those cases that could seem small but have life-changing consequences, like a DUI, a theft charge, right? A battery allegation,
Right.
possession of marijuana. These things can, right there in the moment, you can maneuver them easier than a felony, but the impacts can be the same. For example, if you get a DUI, I think it's still the case that you can't go to Canada, right? That comes as a shock to people, but little things like that have huge implications down the road if you're an international businessman.
Yeah, or we're joking about that on the last show with Justin Timberlake and his
Yeah.
DUI. He says gonna ruin the world tour because you can't
Truthfully.
travel as much,
Right.
with a DUI. So absolutely. All right. So we did not talk about the distinctions for some people because obviously people are going to be voting soon, and you get ballots and you don't really necessarily know all the differences, and sometimes people are just uninformed. So could you explain to our listeners the difference between a county judge, which you just described, versus an actual circuit court judge?
Sure. In terms of the type of cases that are handled, where a county court judge would handle misdemeanor criminal offenses, a circuit court judge is going to handle felonies. Felonies, when it comes to the sentence, the difference is less than a year in jail or a year or more in jail. Those are felonies.
Right. Okay.
On the civil side, circuit cases take higher level civil matters, more than $50,000.
Right.
And then there are other roles like a unified family court, which deals with family court, obviously juvenile offenses. And sometimes here in Pinellas, what you'll see is a county court judge who is sitting as an acting circuit court judge. And so those things are really up to the chief justice where he wants to put you. But there's a lot of variables there. But yeah, those are some of the main distinctions.
Do you have any insight as to where this position that you're campaigning for might be placed?
Well, I can say that the seat that I'm looking to fill is currently filled by the Honorable James Pierce. And he has announced that he's retiring. So That seat is Unified Family Court. He's
Okay.
a county court judge sitting as a circuit court judge. But I do not anticipate that whoever's successful in this campaign, obviously, I'm hoping that's me. But I'm not sure that that is going to be the exact seat that you would go
Sure.
to. Typically, in my experience, and all of my experience has been in the courtroom, so I've seen this shuffle happen a number of times. When new county court judges come into the Justice Center, they typically start with advisory hearings. They go to the first appearance hearings, which are where bond is decided, conditions of pretrial release are decided, things like that. And then they move around.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. So then for someone who, which a lot of people have not had any involvement with the courtroom, have not had any exposure or any reason to be in front of a judge for this position, why is it important for residents to even know what it is or how it could impact them?
That's a great question because I get that a lot. People say, well, I'm not the kind of person that would ever be arrested.
I don't go to court.
Well, for starters, we never know that, right? Life can bring you some crazy twists and turns. But like I said, these are life-changing decisions. And when you read the news and you hear about, the way a case resolved and things that happened during a trial or different things like that, that does impact us. Even if you weren't there in the courtroom, it impacts your level of trust in the system. It impacts your opinion of the system. How do you feel about the courts and judges and the law? Well, that depends on the stories you hear about cases coming out of those courtrooms. So I think everyone should have a vested interest in that. Because we all care about somebody, and if you don't get in trouble, they might. And it matters. It matters a great deal.
Right. And so I would think that people may not even realize how much local courts just impact their day-to-day lives, right? Would you say that that's true?
Absolutely. Until you're in it, you don't realize it, but it's totally disruptive.
Absolutely. So what qualities do you think, make for a great judge, whether it be county judge or any kind of judge, really?
Well, first and foremost, I would say experience practicing law inside the courtroom. Taking cases to trial, arguing motions, standing on your feet, convincing juries, arguing with the judge, respectfully, of course, but stating your position in an artful way and having real-time adaptations through a criminal case or even a civil case as those decisions are made. I tell people all the time, for an attorney, a trial is what a surgery is to a surgeon. There's really just no substitute for actually being in the courtroom. So I think that comes first and foremost, but there's a lot else that matters. And I think a judge's disposition, your personality and your character matter a great deal too. Experience is half of it. But on the other side, you have to be a compassionate person who's willing to listen and understand. And that comes from perspective. That comes from being able to connect with people, even if they don't directly align with you, right? You can understand people and their situation because this seat is going to be over cases that everyday people who are just going through life trying to figure it out fell into a situation and they're depending on you as the judge to see them, hear them, and follow the law. Because even if they're not happy, they can walk out of the courtroom accepting a decision if they understand that the law is what controls nothing else.
And nothing else.
And I think the ability to convey that as a judge is paramount.
I agree.
Especially now.
100%. Yeah. So then out of all the things you're doing and have done in your lifetime thus far, what has made you decide that this is the time now to step into this direction in your career?
Yeah, there are multiple factors. I can say that I've always wanted to be a judge. So I kind of sat patiently for what I felt like was my turn. When I learned that a judge who's been on the bench for over 2 decades has made the decision to step down, I really saw that as an opportunity for me to step up.
Yeah.
I also looked at my son, who's obviously very important to me, and where he's at in his life. And I think that this would be a good time because he's only 4, right? So it's not too much for him to even focus on, but where I'm at in my life as well, in terms of the number of years that I've been practicing, the impact that I've had on the legal community. And I see the position with reverence. And I recognize that in myself. I see it. It always baffles me somewhat that we stand up when the judges enter the courtroom. And I think in some way it should almost be the other way around because that person is the one person who's a servant. And everybody in this room depends on you. It's different for every other role. The clerk, the bailiff, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, or the plaintiff's attorney, whoever. Yeah. We all have a side. But that judge, when they walk in, their job is to stay in the middle And to be able to do that is an honor, and I see it that way.
Yeah.
I think that's also very important. Respect for the position.
Absolutely. That was good. That was heavy. I think that you have to understand the weight of the role. I think if you really appreciate it, then you'll understand how important it is to be in that position and to treat it as such, because it is very, very important to our community, for those that will be coming under the decision and the deciding, hand of that judge. And so I think that's extremely important. But to add a little levity to the conversation, be honest, which is harder.
Okay.
Courtroom, cross-examination, managing a law firm, or getting your son ready for bedtime?
I'm going to say managing the firm. And I say that humbly, but when it comes to our bedtime routine,
you got it down.
We got it down. We go bath, bedtime, brushing the books. We read, we say our prayers. He's pretty locked
Kids
in.
like routine, though, I think.
They do. He feeds off of it. It takes away the confusion. They know what to expect.
Yeah.
Now, if you had asked me those first two things and then convincing him to do something he doesn't want to do, well, that one absolutely, because he is a young man who requires an explanation, and that's something that I love about
they
him.
all do. Why? And
But I take those opportunities. I don't mind getting on a knee and talking to him. And there's certain situations where it's like, Dad, don't do it because I said you got to move forward.
Because I said so.
Yeah, we gotta understand, discipline and things like that.
Yeah.
But every chance I get, I talk to him and just talk to him like he's my age and help him understand. And I can see that he does. So it's cool.
Good. All right. So we got the bedtime routine down. Gotcha. Well, I want to talk about community service before we obviously start to wrap up, because you've always been active in the community, even before you began your decision to campaign. So I'd like to know from you, why was that important to you, being active in the community?
Well, I don't know if I actually said it earlier, but I might have hinted at it that I did say it, that I grew up without my father being a constant presence in my life. And I recognize the men and women who were guideposts for me along the way. And there was a moment where I was able to take a humble look at myself and recognize that it's my turn to be that person, to reach back and grab somebody else, even if it's just one interaction where I can make their life better, to do it. So my community service is not something that is very well documented, actually. I can't tell you how many hours of service I've done doing any one thing, because that hasn't been the focus for me. But what has been the focus is reaching young men. I mentor with a number of different organizations around Pinellas County, and that's always the focus. It always happens the same way. I come in, I speak to a group of young men, I give them my phone number, and I tell them, if you want to go grab lunch, you want to call me, text, have a conversation, let's do it. And every now and then,
do they take you up on it?
Follow up, yeah.
I love it.
Every now and then they do, and I just try to be that example. Which, just saying that out loud makes me even more humble, because who am I? Like I said at the beginning, I feel like I'm just an ordinary dude, but I do recognize that I have a story that when most people hear it, they say, wow, more people need to hear that.
Yeah. Because you never know when you can become for someone else like that person was for you.
Right.
That, military recruiter or, anybody else that just had that one little moment that shifted things for you. So I love that. I love that you think of it that way. So as far as lawyers, what do you think that lawyers can do to kind of better serve the community?
More exposure. I was actually at a community meeting last week, and this was my contribution, is that changing any sort of culture really requires exposure. I think what lawyers can do is help our individual communities learn and understand more about the law. For example, a lot of people think that like juvenile offenses will fall off your record, and then when you become an adult, well, no, that's not the case at all. And when people learn that, then they can
More
tell
education,
the kids that, and the kids can talk about that, and it just changes the way that you see things.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Education and exposure for sure.
And do you feel like the judges should play any role in, supporting the public and the community when it comes to confidence in the legal system?
Yes, but obviously judges have to be very careful, because everything that is done, every decision made by a judge has to fall within the judicial canons, right? Very strict rules that judges have to follow. And one of them really gears itself towards being unbiased and not doing anything to give any notions that you favor this or that. So judges have to be careful. And I think that the best way that I've seen judges impact the community is education. teaching and
Yes.
helping other people understand more about the law.
Yes, absolutely.
They are the manifestation of the law in
Absolutely.
our society. So share that.
Absolutely, 100%. And so you've obviously given, some really noble and respectful reasons as to why you're on this journey. So I feel like this next question is just a nice segue as we get to the point of wrapping up. What kind of legacy are you, looking to leave both professionally and personally? Because you've done a lot of things. You've been a prosecutor, criminal defense, a law professor, you're a father, you are a community servant, and now you're running for judge. What are you hoping that your legacy will be?
I have never been asked that question. Never thought about that before. I would be happy if by the end of my life, people maintain knowing me for the same reasons that they do now. People humble me and flatter me when they say, Zachariah, you're kind, you're genuine, you're professional, you're respectful. You know how to show love.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's all we can really hope for with all of the people in my life. That I just want that to be my legacy, because at the end of the day, titles, positions, it helps.
Yeah.
It's very impactful, but people will remember more how you treated them.
Yes.
More than anything else. And that's what I want my legacy to be, that whether it be clients or people, parties that come in and out of a courtroom, I want them to be able to say that judge was respectful.
Yeah.
He heard me. He listened. He seemed, that he didn't have an axe to grind. He was just a fair person.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Awesome. I hope I'm not misquoting. I think it was it Maya Angelou who said people will remember you more for how you made them feel than what you actually did. So not necessarily the things that you've done, but the way that you made them feel. So I think that's 100% true. So as we get ready to wind it down, you've been an awesome guest as usual. I want to have some fun. I know you're seeing a lot of the county right now. You have probably gone from here and there and everywhere. And so
still more to go.
I want to, yeah, exactly. You still got what, 60?
I want to say 61 days.
61
or 62. 2 months.
Until the election day. Now, obviously, before we close, I'll let you let folks know about when the election is. But you're seeing the county. What do you think right now is one of the most underrated things about Pinellas County?
So many markets.
Yeah.
I mean, so many, just, it doesn't matter what organizations or where or time. It can be morning, midday, even at nighttime. There are so many opportunities to get out and meet people and experience people, what I call in their natural element. That has been surprising to me because I really have been all over the county.
You have, yeah.
It's fun. It's fun because those environments help you just loosen up, just meet people. It's not as stuffy. We're just walking around talking, and I enjoy that. I get to show people who I am and meet new people at the same time.
So then what's your favorite local restaurant? Have you found a new favorite?
Man. Yes, but for one reason specifically. It's called Prohibition Dunedin.
Okay, yeah.
And I say this, there are some fantastic restaurants around here. I don't want to leave anybody else out, but I'm saying this because of their brisket. I'm a barbecue guy, and I can tell that they actually are smoking brisket the right way.
The right way. Nice. All right, so when's Election Day?
Election Day is August 18th, 2026, and the deadline to register to vote is July 20th of 2026. So everyone make sure you're registered.
Absolutely. Hopefully you've learned some great things about our judicial system and learned more about Zachariah Wade, who is running for county judge. We will always be here every Tuesday at 5 o'clock with your live legal call-in talk show. Lastly, how can people reach you if they want to reach out to you and ask more questions?
Social media is the best. I'm on Facebook. You can see my personal Facebook, which is Zachariah Wade. I'm on Instagram, which is Zachariah Wade ESQ. And then the Facebook page for the campaign is Zachariah Wade for County Court Judge, Group 10.
Nice. We will see you next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Thanks, folks.
WTAN, Clearwater.
FM 106.1.
WDCF, Dade City.
FM 102.3.
Listen.
Details are coming. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. That's what Vice President J.D. Vance says as he prepares to sign an agreement with Iran. He tells Fox's The Five the agreement is simple.
1, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. 2, the Straits of Hormuz are open. And number three, there are all of these benefits contemplated that the Iranians can get if they behave.
On the question of whether Iran will profit from the agreement, the vice president said again, if Iranians change how they interact with the world, they will benefit economically. And if they don't get anything. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer again